All right, let's go to the live line. We have Director of the Centers for Disease Control, Robert Redfield, on the show. Robert, good morning. Dr. Redfield, good morning. Welcome to the show, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Chris.
First of all, thanks for being out there and talking directly to the American people. We love it.
Well, really enjoyed the opportunity, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
So in relation to when this thing first got on the CDC's radar to where you thought we would be on April 6th, is it worse than you guys thought, about what you thought it was? How would you describe your expectations of where we're at on April 6th to what the reality is right now?
Well, I think the reality is this has evolved into the greatest public health crisis that our nation's had in more than 100 years. When it first raised its head in China at the end of December, early January, there was a lot of information that this may be more like some of the other coronaviruses like MERS and SARS, which really aren't as easily transmissible between people to people. Obviously, what we've seen as this has evolved, that this virus is very readily able to transmit from person to person. So this, as I said, has evolved from an isolated less than 50 cases in China in early January to now the largest global pandemic that this world has seen in over 100 years.
I know a lot of reporting's coming out about the trying to get information from the Chinese during this process. Have they been as bad as we all think they've been in relation to sharing this, or is there anything surprisingly good in there?
Well, we've had over a 30-year partnership with the China CDC and us. We actually have one of our overseas CDCs right embedded. And scientist to scientist, there's been, good dialogue back and forth as this outbreak became recognized. I can't really speak to the broader governmental, but at our level, we've had good interactions with my counterpart and shared information early on in this outbreak and continue to share information.
What about we talk about the preparation of this country for something like this. Was there ever any way to really be prepared for what hit us?
This is probably the most important question and most important lesson of all of this is, I think, and I've said this before on multiple occasions, for decades, our nation has really underinvested in public health preparedness. If you look in Arizona, I'm sure if you go visit your health department, you won't find them overstaffed, over-resourced. And I think one of the big lessons from this is that, we need to over-prepare our public health infrastructure, not under-prepare. That is, we need data analytics and we need to modernize our data capacity across the nation. Laboratory, we have to have state-of-the-art laboratories in our public health labs, not just a single platform that we use for flu, which is the case when this happened. We need to have a workforce that's robust and can basically surge, rapid response fund so we can move quickly, and then an overall global strategy around the world so we can detect, prevent, and respond to outbreaks wherever they occur. So clearly, I think that the nation was underprepared for decades. My hope is that with every tragedy, there's something really great that can come from it. Is that our nation now sees that we need to not have this happen again. We need to rebuild our public health infrastructure at the tribal, territorial, state, and local health departments across this country so we have the robust capacity to respond to these outbreaks when they occur so they don't become as widespread as this one has.
Talk about the dynamic of these. We've been talking about some of the models, whether it's from the Imperial College guy in England or University of Washington. And then, thank God the numbers are falling short of some of these catastrophic numbers. Tell me about the dynamic of the modeling and how it helps and how it influences decision making, and then when the reality comes in, how does the decision making transform? I guess is my.
Yeah, I think it's really important. First, models are only as good as their assumptions.
Right.
And, obviously there was a lot unknown about this virus. So the ability to accurately make a lot of assumptions, there was much wider than, say, if this was an influenza B outbreak, that we know much better. So that's the first thing to say. Second thing I will say, from a public health perspective, to me, the real value of models is to have a model and then try to understand, if I invest resources here, what does that do to the model? If I invest intervention strategy here, what does that do to the model? So it's a way of beta testing how you're going to respond and what it does to the different model. The model should never be used to assume that we have a number.
Right.
And you saw those numbers are quite staggering. I mean, you can 200,000 to 2 million Americans losing their lives before the fall. That's a pretty staggering number.
Does throwing those are throwing those kind of numbers out actually helpful? Because of what they do is they scare the hell out of everyone to social distance. Is that the purpose?
I don't. I think different people may look at it different ways in terms of transparency. I mean, CDC had models early on. We didn't really publicize the models. We used them internally to understand mitigation strategies. I do think, part of the importance of getting the American public's attention that these models did is we really need the American public to be fully engaged now with great vigor and vigilance on the social distancing. As you pointed out, even those models that were done, they assumed that only about 50% of the American public would pay attention to the recommendations. In fact, what we're seeing is a large majority of the American public are taking the social distancing recommendations to heart. And I think that's the direct consequence why you're seeing the numbers are going to be much, 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 much lower than would have been predicted by the models. So if I could say anything, I would, first thank the American public that have taken these recommendations, 30 days or so to spread the coronavirus to heart. I would ask everybody who's sort of not quite there to really go all in on this. This is a real opportunity you have to save a life, or save multiple lives. I tell the American people we are not defenseless against this virus. We have one of the most powerful weapons, and that is this virus can't swim 7 feet. If we just social distance, we will see this virus and this outbreak basically decline. And I think that that's what you're seeing. And I think we're going to see the numbers are, in fact, going to be much less than would have been predicted by the models, because the spirit of the American public to take this to heart and to operationalize this was far beyond what the modelers would ever.
So I got a hard break, and I'm going to lose you in literally 50 seconds. What is if we start seeing those numbers truly flatten out, right? What is literally like a little bit of a snippet of phase 2 look like in relation to start opening up maybe parts of the country? A little bit. Give me a little light at the end of the tunnel in less than 27 seconds.
It's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. It's a great week for us to look at the light at the end of the tunnel. And we're going to get through this. So what you're going to see is expanded surveillance so we know the extent of the outbreak, particularly in some of the areas that were not hit as hard, like Arizona, for example. And then really having that public health capacity for early case identification, isolation, and contact tracing.
Dr. Redfield, we're running out of time.